Stuff you got to know before you go buying a house. Ryan Herring, his awesomeness, also known as the owner of Paragon Home Inspections and CEO of Home Medic Inspection Network.
I like the title, The Awesomeness.
His awesomeness.
His awesomeness.
And if you want to be a home inspector, you got to get past this guy. So just be aware of that. Let's talk about, speaking of home inspectors, let's talk about, let's say we've got somebody who, let's define this individual, husband and wife. Let's make them me. My first home I bought when I was 25. Wife was 22. At the time we had one kid. She was 9 months old. And there wasn't such thing as a home inspector back in 85. I started it as a home inspector in 93. So the best thing I could do was just call my family over and see what they thought.
Yeah.
They all came over and said, "Oh, the paint's pretty. I like the carpet." And they blessed the house.
Oh, great. That's important.
A couple days later, the washer flooded because it had a stick in it.
Oh.
Dishwasher. But let's fast forward from, let's say, 93, to the present. You got somebody, he's 25. They got a baby. They're buying their first home. They don't know what they're doing.
Right.
How do they? And then you've got the realtor says, "Well, you got to pick an inspector."
Yeah.
And the realtor doesn't really want to give you a lot of advice because they don't want to. The thinking among realtors and brokers is if realtor A tells me to hire you and you suck, I can't sue you because you don't have any money. So I'm going to sue the broker.
Mm-hmm.
So as a result, they've got to be careful about who they are recommending, leaving me, the home buyer, with not a lot of guidance.
True. And, realtors shouldn't have to be afraid of those things.
Right.
They should have a list of inspectors to give a client and say, here's a list, go through them, and I find this guy good or I find this guy, he's okay. And they shouldn't have to worry about being sued. But now we're back in reality. Okay.
Right.
But, I get a lot of calls from people saying, well, how much do you charge for a home inspection? And I say, well, we'll stop right there and say it's not about the money. Okay, and I'm not trying to say that just because I want a lot more money. I'm saying that because it's a huge investment. And you want the best inspector to go into your home that you're going to be living in.
Yeah, my daughter, for example, the one I mentioned earlier, she's about a $500,000 home. To me, that's insanity. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And you kind of don't want to quibble over another $50 if you can get the
best inspector. Yeah.
Right. And I told this to Bill Gephardt once. He interviewed me for a different reason. I told him all you need to be a home inspector is to have a business card and a headache. There are no state certifications.
No, which is really sad.
So you can get the guy that got fired at a grocery store yesterday and now he's a home inspector, or you can get somebody like you who knows a thing or two.
Well, and even then you have to be careful because even let's say, let's call him Jason again. Jason got fired from Albertsons.
Jason, we're taking your name in vain and we're enjoying this.
That's right. Let's say he says, okay, I'm going to get all these tools and I'm going to advertise myself, okay? And he looks fancy. He goes out in his car and he does some inspections. And then you have this other guy that's been doing it for 5 years, okay? And he has the car with the logo on it. It looks fancy. His name's fancy, okay? But are you actually getting what you pay for?
Yeah, and how do they know if they're getting what they pay for? They don't even know what a home inspection is or should be.
Right. See, Jason, down the road, 5 years later, can turn into this other guy that has the fancy car and the shirts and all cool cards and so forth, and the big facade on the front saying, I'm cool, I'm a good home inspector, I've been doing this for a little while, okay? So that goes back to, we're not looking at pricing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we're looking at reviews. We're looking at certifications, what he does in certifications. Okay, and we're looking at being there for your home inspection.
Being there, kind of important.
Kind of important. It's probably the most crucial thing, because let's say you do hire Jason,
Mm-hmm.
and you're there for the inspection, and he walks in and looks around and says, "Yep, pretty good," and he walks out.
Uh-huh.
You know you have a crappy home inspector, and you need to get another one.
I'm actually dealing with this today. I've got a buddy who is wanting to be the home inspector. We're starting down the road of training him. The realtor that he has an in with, that realtor is used to paying lowball rates.
Mm-hmm.
And so they kind of expect us to accept lowball rates. But the reason why she's hiring us is because dude A, our predecessor,
Mm-hmm.
sucked. You know, he was killing deals over little things. He missed stuff left and right. You know, if it was just based on his recommendations, my buddy's son would have not bought a house, and there was just no reason to kill that deal.
Wow. Yeah, really do your homework on the inspector you get. I'm not saying they're all bad. There's a few good ones like us out there. But you really have to do your homework, and you want to be there for the inspection so you can find out what inspector you got and learn about your home. It's not just to see what he's doing,
Mm-hmm.
but it's an opportunity to learn about your home, so you can save money on your water heater and learn how to change your filter in your furnace, learn how to run the thermostat. Some people actually don't know how to do those things.
Well, especially if it's like a Nest thermostat. You know, some of the higher tech ones,
Yeah,
you do need to read a book first.
you do.
And in the case of the guy I mentioned earlier, you need to show him where his furnace filter is, or he's going to have to, go sell another business for $5 million so that he can hire somebody to replace his furnace every 2 years. And you mentioned having buyers there. It's one of those things where you can make the inspection custom to them. For example, let's say that you've got a sidewalk.
Mm-hmm.
I'll actually go back to a friend of mine, good friend of mine. She moved from near here over towards Cedar Hills, and she had like a 2 to 3 inch gap between the driveway and her garage slab.
Oh wow.
And so then, as the home inspector, the question is, how much of a big deal is that? And if you got that much of a trip spot between those two locations, is grandma, who's moving in there? Is it grandma and she's going to trip over that and fall and end up in the hospital?
Right.
Or is it teenagers, or is it somebody in a wheelchair? All of these scenarios change how much of a big deal that 2.5 inch gap is.
It sure does. And who's in the family matters as far as how young the youngest is
Mm-hmm.
to, like you said, the oldest.
Right. Yeah, and trip spots in the sidewalk as well. Also, I mentioned earlier about maybe a hot neutral reverse electrical wire. I've heard of deals killed because of that.
That should never be the case. Those are so simple to replace. Let's talk about a GFCI for a second.
Okay.
If, let's say, in the kitchen,
Mm-hmm.
there's a GFCI that's not functional, and I can say to the clients right then, the home buyer, this GFCI is not functional and it's by water. Don't use it until it's remedied.
Mm-hmm. The hardware costs $30.
Yeah, $30, $40. And that whole bad scenario gets avoided.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it doesn't become oh my gosh, I can't buy this house.
Right, exactly.
Then you get the inspectors. I'm trying real hard not to say, half the stucco guys I know belong in jail, half the electricians belong in jail, and half the home inspectors belong in jail.
Landscapers as well.
Yeah?
I've never found a good landscaper.
Hard to find.
They are hard to find. Good.
But yeah, it's easy to find the wrong guy, and and one of my examples of that, I used to belong to one of those home inspector organizations. And a guy who was the high price leader at the time, he came up to me and he says, you're way underpriced. How can you walk away for what you're doing that home for? And at the time, I think I was like $250. This was a lot of years ago, 20 years ago. And I wasn't the low price leader, but I was about the middle of the crowd. But for me, that $250 was an umbrella price. Mm. And he goes, I just walked away from a home yesterday for $1,200. And the way he was doing it is he was offering an upfront rate that was about like mine, and then he would get to the inspection, and he would say, well, do you want me to look for termites? You want me to look for asbestos, lead, mold, hantavirus, radon, and if the buyer said no, he made them sign a document that says I hereby release.
Oh wow!
And so in this way, you can kind of terrify the home buyers into writing that check for 4 figures.
Yeah. Wow, that is unethical.
I thought so.
Yeah. The base price should include it all, really.
It should.
It should.
And I tell people that for me, I do the same inspection for them that I would do if it was my brother. I wouldn't be trying to upsell my brother.
Right.
And in the same category, you get guys who, and this is in the shyster department. You get one guy I know who would go up into an attic, and in this particular case, I was called in later to verify if he was correct, and he wasn't. He saw what amounts to basically pine tar.
Okay.
Only it was fir tar. It kind of looks like honey.
Yep.
And he said that was mold. And he volunteered himself and his cousin to go fix that for $5,000.
Wow.
Belong in jail.
Yes, I would say so.
And there's plenty of that. I know another guy who he was selling air purifier systems. Because he wasn't getting enough business as a home inspector, he had to do some upselling to keep paying the bills. And to me, that's not who you want to be looking for.
No, definitely
the
not. It should be straight up honest what you're going to get. Mm-hmm. And yeah, there shouldn't be any upselling at all. When, let's say, the inspector runs into asbestos, mm-hmm. It should be clearly stated, this is asbestos, this it may be friable, this mm-hmm. one is not friable, and let the homeowner know exactly how to deal with it. Not just say, well, bypass it and say, do you want an asbestos test? Because it's going to come out positive.
Right. And that's my thing with mold too, is generally if there's a leak somewhere, if you can see the mold, it's mold. No use testing for it, that's mold.
Yeah, exactly. And as well, you don't want to make a tiny mold spot out of, make it into a big problem.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I think mold happens in a lot of homes, and it's, I have actually seen inspectors go to homes that are framed, and then it rains or snows on them. And that guy will go to the contractor and say, "There's snow on your home. I'll mold remediate that for $3,000." And most of the contractors will just throw them off their property, but he must be getting enough checks written to him from enough contractors that it keeps him in business doing that sort of thing.
Wow, there's a lot of shysters out there.
A lot of shysters. And so how does, this goes back to the purpose for this segment, how does a person choose the right home inspector?
Well, again, you go back to the reviews, mm-hmm. and you look at certifications, not just one certification, but his experience as far as, does he know about mold, not just watch something on YouTube.
Oh, I've seen that before.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can tell. A lot of home inspectors don't want you there because they don't want you asking questions about mold or whatever.
Right.
They want to be able to summarize and say, oh, by the way, you've got mold over in that corner, and then you've got a bad roof over here, and not have to answer a lot of questions because they don't want to show a lack of depth.
Because they can.
Right. So, if we've discouraged you about home inspectors, just know that there, like you said, there's some good ones.
There are some good ones.
You've got to know where to look.
You really do. So when you are looking for a home inspector, get on the phone or meet them in person, and be there for the inspection.
I've run into home buyers who are there at the beginning of the inspection, and the home inspector just gives them the stiff arm. You wait in this corner until I'm done, and that's not the guy you want to hire.
No, you want to fire that guy immediately.
Yes.
And you have the power to do that because you hired them. You're paying them. You're flipping the bill. You tell them to scat, and then you call me or
or somebody else with good reviews. If there's another home
reviews.
inspector, great. But it's your home. It's your $500,000 investment. You're the one writing the check. You're the boss.
Yeah, don't be timid about being there and asking questions.
And it's kind of reminds me of the golden rule of business. The guy with the gold makes the rules. You're the guy with the gold. You make the rules.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like the government. They work for us. And
theoretically,
it should be that way.
Uh-huh.
But anyways, so we do work for the public, and we are there to answer questions, to show them what it is, why it is, and the consequences of the issues involved.
Yeah. Thanks, Ryan.